Hi, in this tutorial, I'll show you how to do complex Elementor form calculations. So here I have two date fields, and if I pick the check-in date and if I pick checkout date, you can see that this field is actually giving me the number of dates or the number of days between the check-in date and checkout date. Let me pick another date. So I'm picking 24th of this month and 8th of this month, and you can see that it's giving me the value. Basically, it's calculating the number of days between these two dates. This might look simple, but it requires JavaScript, and it can be done quite easily using Elementor Pro form and of course Dynamic Content plugin for Elementor. Hi, I'm Karthik. I'm a web developer and the founder of Wpalgoridm.com. On Design School by Wpalgoridm, I make step-by-step WordPress and Elementor tutorials for beginners. Like I said, in this tutorial, we'll just use Elementor Pro form and Dynamic Content plugin to calculate the number of days between two dates, and even better, we'll calculate the amount by multiplying the number of days with a number, or you can do a complex math. It's all up to you. And after that, we can actually collect the amount right from within Elementor Pro form, again by using Dynamic Content plugin for Elementor. Now, if you don't have Elementor Pro, you can get it from the link in the description. If you don't have Dynamic Content plugin for Elementor, they're having a sale right now. It's up to 30% off on all plans, even if you purchase it or upgrade to a new plan. So highly recommend getting Dynamic Content plugin for Elementor as well, and you need that for this tutorial. Links to everything will be in the description. Let's get into the tutorial and see how the JavaScript field enables us to do all this magic. Go to your WordPress dashboard, click on Dynamic. You need to have the latest version of Dynamic Content plugin and Elementor Pro. Make sure that this JS field for Elementor Pro form is selected. If it's not, if it's this red sign, click on it and click on Save Extensions, and that will make sure that you have the JS field enabled on your Elementor Pro form. Just create a new page and click on Edit with Elementor. Just create a new page and click on Edit with Elementor. It takes you to Elementor interface like you normally would. Now just drag in the form widget, which is this. It's applied by Elementor Pro plugin. Right click and drag it. You have normal fields, name, email, message by default. Now I'll just remove name or email and message for now, and I'll just click on add item, and I'll just call this, or I'll just pick JS field from here. It's this one. So JS stands for JavaScript, and I'll just call it JS for now. We can change it later. The label is what appears in this, right? And you can see when I selected JS field, it gives me some function, right? So this is the basic syntax. You can also refer to their documentation, right? So this return, these braces, equals, and this greater than sign is common. And within this flower braces, you put your function, right? So within this, you put something, you do something. So a function in JavaScript is what we're going to write. Actually, you can copy the code from the link in the description, right? It will be available on wpalgoridm.com. Simply copy and change the values like I show you in this tutorial, and you're good to go. Also, I'll just click on this section. I'll change the content width to make our form look good. So around 700 pixels would do, right? Okay. Now back to the form. Again, click on JS field. Now I'll just remove this whole thing, the get field and everything. I'll just put a colon or semicolon here, right? I'll just update it. I'll just click on preview changes, and no matter what I type in the name field, it just shows hello, and this field is read only. You cannot change it. Even if you try to type something into it, nothing happens because it's usually used for complex calculations, which I'm going to show you in a bit. Okay, that's great. But what if I want to display hello, and after that I want to display whatever value that I've typed into this name field? How can I get that? Well, it's simple. You just say plus, and you just have a function called get field. You have to type it the exact way. right? It's case sensitive, so you have to be extra careful with it. And within braces, you need to type double quotes, and within double quote, you have to put in the ID of the field that you're trying to get. So in this case, I'm trying to get the name field and its ID is name. So I have to put that in here. So get field within braces, within double quotes, name this whole thing will actually fetch me the value of the name field. Also down here, I'll select update on each key press so that the value is dynamically updated as you type. I'll just hit update and you can click on preview again or go to the preview. It's automatically updated, or let's actually update it. So I'll just say Karthik in here, and you can see that whatever value that I type in here, right? If I change it to John, you can see the JS field is returning hello and also the value of this field. And it can be any field. It can be name, it can be email, it can be a number, right? So this get field will essentially get the value of that field. Let's add another field and we'll basically select email this time. You can basically select any field and I'll just call it email, right? Under advanced again, I'll change this to email, and under again, I'll just drag it down. This JS field, make sure that this is the last field or the final field in your form. Click on JS field. Before the semicolon, I'll just click plus again, and I'll again do another get field, right? Again within braces, double quotes, and within double quote, again email. I think email is the ID of the field, so you have to just type that, click on advanced and just copy the ID of the field that you're trying to fetch. So we're fetching the value of name field and we're also getting email field. Let's see how it will work. Again, this is refreshed, Karthik. It shows Karthik here. If I type some email, it also shows some email in here, right? It shows my name, also my email. What if I want some space? Well, between this, just do another plus, double quotes, and just enter space, as many spaces as you want. I just want a single space. Just type space bar, again update. Now the preview is updated. You can see that there's a single space added between the name value and also the email value, right? So this is JavaScript field, and that's how you get the values of basically any other Elementor Pro form field, right? And you can refer to their documentation. It's really helpful. Okay, now I'll show you a simple calculation. I'll just remove the email field. I'll have the name field just for the sake of having it, and I'll add another field, and this time we'll just pick a number. It can be any field, but we'll just pick a number field, right? I'll call it number, and I'll change the ID of the number field under advanced to NUM, right? For each field you have advanced tab. I'll just change the ID to NUM, and within the JavaScript field, this time I'll just change the whole thing, right? So you can refer to the documentation. When you do get field of a field, it's basically returned as a string. So string, you can think of it as a text. But when we're trying to get a number, again, it will return as a string, which is essentially text. So when you do that +2, it will just join those two strings. So if my value is 5 and you do +2, it'll return 52, which is kind of weird, but that's how JavaScript works, right? So in order to avoid that, in order to make it a number, so this is the fix. You do return get field, get the field ID, and have another parameter called true, and then do the math with it, right? I'll show you how it works. So again, we're back in our field. I'll do return, and this time again another get field function within rounded braces. I'll get number field using its ID, right? NUM, and comma, I'll use true. So this get field number true, the whole thing within this whole thing will fetch me the value of the number field. Now I can simply multiply it with 5, right? Or I can add 5, subtract 5, or do whatever, right? We'll see how that works. I'll click on update. Again, the preview is updated. Let's enter a number 10, and you can see it's multiplied by 5, and that's shown in the JS field. If I change it to 1000, that becomes 5000. 10,000, it becomes 50,000, and so on, right? So it's basically multiplying this number field with 5, and that's what we specified in our logic. So this is a simple function, and we didn't use any functions. What if you really want to use a function? So instead of this whole thing, I can simply call a function. So function in JavaScript is basically a logic that is performed, right? So when it's called, and I'll just call it my function. Once you call the function, you have to define the function as well, right? Or you have to say what that function actually does. This is JavaScript, don't worry, but I'll show you, right? Again, my function within parentheses, I'll update. It doesn't matter what you type here. You can see that this actually returns hey there, which is basically our function. Or you can do this as well, right? Get field name, right? Even that is valid. See that? So it's added in here, and the function returns hey there, and also the name of the person or the value of the name field. You can again do another plus, add a space, and do all that stuff. So that's all great. So basically you understood that JavaScript field can get the value, do simple math, but it's not limited to simple math. You can do any JavaScript function using this JS field. So I wrote a function. So basically I made another form where I have check-in date, where the user can pick checkout date. This is typical when you have a travel website. So based on the check-in date and the checkout date, my JS field, I'll just stretch this out so you will understand, right? I'm actually calling a function called calc days between dates, right? Again, don't worry about any of the code. I'll explain what you need to change. But basically, this thing is calling this function, which is essentially getting this date1 variable. It's actually getting the value of my indate, or when I say this is basically get field of indate. So I'm actually getting the first check-in date by using the get field function of check-in date. And that I'm making it as the value of date1, right? And date2, I'm actually making it as outdate, which is basically the ID of the second field. So the only thing that you need to change when you copy this code in your JS code is this. So whichever is the check-in date ID, just replace this in date with that ID, and whatever ID you give for your checkout date or whatever you call it, just replace out date with that ID. ID is the thing that you have under advanced tab. So once you do that, this whole thing will automatically work. You don't have to change anything, right? And basically I'll explain in detail what this exactly does. So you're getting two dates. Now it's getting time and subtracting the difference in time. So once it has the amount of time, it's then calculating the number of days of that particular difference that we got. And basically this works even when the years are different. And I got this function from a website called Geeks for Geeks, and it's a good website if you're trying to crack interviews in Google, Apple, and stuff like that. So if you just Google how to calculate days between two dates in JavaScript, this is the website that I'm talking about, right? And we're just concerned with this snippet, but this website is really good for coding and stuff. I used to practice from this website while I was a dev. Anyway, so this is the snippet. I just changed this hard-coded value to get field and this value to get field of the checkout date, and rest all is pretty much the same. Again, we don't need this last part. The code will be available. You can just copy the code and change these two values, right? So in the var or the variable date1, we're getting the value of indate. These are basically date type fields, as you can see here. So it's basically a date type Elementor Pro field. It's applied by Elementor Pro form itself, right? I'm just giving it an idea of indate. And this is the checkout date is again a date type field. I gave it an ID of outdate, or you can just call it anything you want. And these IDs should be what you have given for those two dates, right? So it's basically calculating the number of days. Again, I hope you get it. So I'll just click on preview changes. And once you click this, it will show NaN, which stands for not a number. So since we didn't pick any dates, it's showing NaN. Once we start picking the date, it will be properly displayed. I'll just click on check-in date. It gives me the date picker. I'll pick 8. And if you want to do validation, you can do PHP validation or the JS validation. I explained how to do PHP validation. Again, you can check out Dynamic Content plugin playlist on Design School by Wpalgoridm. All of the tutorials are there. You can learn everything about Dynamic Content plugin. And I'll click on checkout date, and maybe I'll just pick 17. So this is 8th of this month and this is 17th of this month. And you can see the difference, or the number of days are calculated as 9. I also have a payment field, which I'll get to in a bit. Again, this is provided by the Dynamic Content plugin for Elementor. You have PayPal field and you also have Stripe field. So you can use the value of this, which we'll get to in a bit. Just ignore the payment field. We'll add another field, or we'll just duplicate the JS field and we'll just call the JS field days, to be precise, because that's what it's getting, right? So I called the first JS field days because that's actually what it's getting, right? I just changed the ID to days as well. And the second JS field, I'll call it money or amount or bill or whatever you call it. Amount. I'll just call it amount. I'll also change the ID to amount, right? And the logic or the content in this, you don't need this whole function in the second field. Again, we don't need this at all, right? All we need to do for amount is to get the number of days and multiply it with the number. That's a typical formula for hotels, right? So if you're pricing your room at 150 per head, maybe if you have a different option for deluxe room, for, suite room and all that, you can add that. I'll also show you that logic in a bit. So return, again, we'll use the get field function that I told you earlier, right? Again, get field within double quotes, we're getting days. Again, true, so that this is actually returned as a number, right? And I'll just multiply it with $100, right? Or 100. So that way the amount is basically 100 times the number of days the users are staying in my hotel or at my hotel. I'll just click on this. Let's see if our logic is working. And just a name, doesn't matter. 8th of this month and 17th of this month. Number of days 9. And since I priced for each day, it's 900. So they have to pay me $900 if they want to stay for 9 days. And it's automatically done all by using JavaScript. You don't have to worry about anything. Okay, I'll just add another select menu option and room type. I'll just call it room type. Under advanced, I'll just change its ID to type. All right. And deluxe, I have to use this pipe character or the vertical bar. Deluxe is 100. Suite room is, I guess, 200, right? So $100 more. Or maybe for suite room, I can charge 100 extra. For deluxe, 0, because I'm already charging them 100, right? Again, I'll just go and drag this above the amount field, right? I'll change the logic in the amount field. So I'm actually multiplying it with 100. And after that, I just want to again do another return, or I just want to do get field function again. This whole code snippets will be available from Wpalgoridm.com. Don't worry about it. Just focus on what I'm teaching. Okay. So this whole function is getting us the base amount, right? If they're staying for 9 days, I'm multiplying it with 100. But if he picks a deluxe room or a suite room, I'm actually charging him extra, right? So room type, the idea of that is type. And in your select menu, when you separate it with this pipe character, the value is automatically obtained, right? I already showed that in earlier dynamic content plugin videos. Again, I'll just say type, comma, true, so that it's actually treated as a number, right? Hopefully that logic works. So to the base fare, we're adding extra. So if he picks deluxe room, nothing happens. If he picks suite room, $100 is added, or presidential, or whatever, exclusive, or whatever, king size, you can have another category. This is basically a way to build logic. You can charge him $200 more apart from the base fare or whatever your logic is. I'm just assuming some logic and explaining it. We'll see if that works. Again, I'll just click this, click on preview changes. Let me pick a date. Karthik. I'll pick 7th. I'm not doing any validation. Again, check out PHP validation. Search the channel for PHP validation using Dynamic Content plugin. Number of days 10. Deluxe, it's 1000 because I'm not adding anything. If I pick suite room, $100 more or $100 more. If I pick exclusive room, $200 more. That's how I specified the logic, right? Hope you're getting it. This is similar to how we did amount field, but here we're calculating the amount of days, and based on the number of days, we are calculating the base fare and we're adding some extra field. Maybe you can add taxes and all this, and we're not done yet. Trust me. You can set this amount field value as the payment field value. So click on payment field and you can pick PayPal or Stripe from here, right? But before coming here, you have to configure it in the license or the APIs, I guess. So click on PayPal and select your sandbox ID, client ID. It's there in the documentation. I'll make a separate tutorial on how to configure PayPal and Stripe. You can also refer to Dynamic Content's documentation. Once you configure PayPal and Stripe, you can simply use those fields, and name, you can simply say final amount, right? Item name is that, and value, you can dynamically get it from the amount field, which is awesome, right? So this whole calculation is done in the amount field, and the payment field value is set as the amount field. You can just pick this, and value field ID, you can set it to amount, which is the value of the amount field. And once you can also make this as required, so that user has to pay the amount before checking out from this form, which is really good, right? So you have to make it required, and that's really awesome. So that's how you build a complete hotel management or room management flow just by using Elementor Pro and the powerful dynamic content plugin for Elementor. I'll share both of the snippets. I'll share the sample snippet for the amount, right? Just make sure that you have these values, or you can pick any logic and based on that, you can change the values. But to get the difference in the number of days, this is the function that you need to use. And this function works even when the years are different. Let me show you that, which is really cool. So if I pick 15 July 2021 and I'll just go all the way till next year, I'll pick first, and you can see it still calculates the number of days, right? It doesn't matter which year it is, calculates that, calculates the amount, and you can set that value as your payment field value, and you can process the payment right from Elementor Pro form, which is really awesome. And trust me, that's not it. You can do even a lot more with Dynamic Content plugin and Elementor Pro. You can generate PDFs based on these details. You can generate custom messages. You can do dynamic emails. You can do dynamic redirects. You can do a hell lot more just by using Elementor Pro form and Dynamic Content plugin. Again, everything that I talked till now will be in the Dynamic Content plugin playlist on this channel. If you don't have dynamic content plugin, they have 30% off on some plans. Now is the best time to invest in dynamic content plugin and do the amazing flow that I just showed you. And this is just one example of what you can do. You can, of course, put in your own logic, put in your own formula, and you can calculate interests, you can do mortgages, and you can do pretty much any logic. You can calculate EMI on cars, and this goes on, and I'll stop it here. If you don't have dynamic content plugin, links to that will be in the description. Highly appreciate it if you give this video a thumbs up, and this will actually help educate and empower others like you. Again, that's it for now. I'll catch you in the next one. Until then, keep rocking. Peace.